Hey gang, it's Wednesday. It is Hump Day, and you know what that means? It's time for Hump Day Happy Hour with Dentist in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live, and it's over a cocktail. It's cold weather. We're drinking a heavy red wine tonight. Got the turtleneck on. We're ready for a great show. I've got my people with me here. I've got my good buddy, Dr. Chad Duplantis. And see, you guys can't hide anymore. I can pull you up when I want to now.
I was like, how did I hit that button? I was totally going to jack with him.
You didn't, buddy. I can bring you up now when you try to hide. That's Dr. Chad Duplantis. On the other side is Dr. Jennifer Bell. We are all dentists. We are all educators. And we are all business owners. And you know what our job is? Our job is to bring all of you in the know with all the behind the scenes information we can. You know, we're going to talk a lot about the AGD tonight. And you know, there's so many great reasons to be a part of that organization. The guy you're going to hear from tonight, Chris Griffin, amazing guy from South Carolina. The reason that I got involved in the South Carolina AGD and why I became further involved nationally was really because of he and several of the guys and gals in his class that really resurrected the South Carolina AGD. But you know, the friendships that you make in groups like that, man, they're just long lasting. And anyway, as I said, we got a great guest tonight for everyone out there. Dr. Chris Griffin is with us. He's on the fellowship exam committee at the AGD. And we're real excited to talk to him. He's a fellow South Carolinian, great guy. And we're going to be talking all about the AGD tonight. But before we do that, JB, I think you got some news for us, don't you?
Always.
Yes.
Well, I gave you my COVID update. I think we're in the downward trend, so I'm pretty excited. And I was really pumped to see UK change some massive rules today. So, you know, all those things maybe help to open up society a little bit more. One interesting thing that happened actually this week was Lyndon Cooper was named the Dean of VCU. So for those of you who are watching that were UNC grads, or he was in Chicago actually for the last few years. Lyndon was chair of the prosthodontic department when I was at UNC. If you want to look up just about any prosthodontic article in PubWeb, it probably has Dr. Cooper's name on it. He is a prolific publisher and educator. And he just got named as the dean of VCU. So we're happy to have him a little bit closer back to home. I think he does consider UNC to be probably his original stomping ground. So it was really cool to see a former professor of mine now moving up in the ranks in academia. So congratulations to him. A little bit more information. So actually we had a post about it this week from Samuel Joachim, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. And he had posted the No Surprise Billing Act. It got some recognition, but I don't know that folks really looked into that a whole lot. I would encourage dentists to at least take a look at the ADA's Cliff Notes version of the No Surprise Billing Act. And the reason is this: for uninsured and self-pay patients, there are going to be really tight parameters about what you can send them bills for after service. So if you don't have a signed treatment plan or a signed financial agreement between yourself and that patient, if it's in excess of $400, they can take you, hold on, let me see the actual wording. They can initiate a patient-provider dispute resolution process to dispute the excess of $400. So it doesn't appear that this is going to necessarily affect insured patients yet. And it doesn't affect patients that receive benefit from Medicaid, Medicare, and many of the other Indian Health Service programs and the VA. But uninsured and self-pay, this is absolutely going to protect them in dental offices. When the rule first came out, it wasn't 100% clear if dental offices were going to need to look at this, if this was really going to impact us. But we absolutely are included. So Number one, I would just stress making sure you have signed financials from every patient that comes through the door that you do procedures on to your best ability. And then if they're uninsured and self-pay, there's an extra step to make sure that those financials are sort of buttoned down before you perform services. So, and you have like 3 business days to give them that written proposal. And there's this whole restriction and regulation around it. So again, I don't know how many folks were super interested in the story earlier this week, but you absolutely will have to comply. So keep that in mind. Everybody good with that?
No.
I know.
Very reasonable.
Just do the treatment plans, get signed financials. That will at least be the first step of documentation.
Yeah.
So I had the benefit this weekend of participating in the joint council meeting for the AGD on the Dental Practice Council. And that's the group that looks really heavily at new legislation, new regulatory actions that could directly impact dentists. I'm going to post a few new links tomorrow. One is for our 3D printer crowd out there in Facebook land that are doing 3D printing in their offices. The FDA is looking pretty heavily right now at 3D printers and their application and use of printing things that can then be used as medical devices, i.e. crowns, occlusal guards, Essex retainers, clear aligner therapy, et cetera. And whether or not those are going to fall under some heavy regulatory management. So there's some open comment period that we're currently in. I'll send the link for it. If you are 3D printing, I would at least encourage you to take a peek at it to see how this might impact your ability to do 3D printing in your office and the other check steps you're going to have to do if some of this gets approved. The other piece is I know a lot of dentists out there have their own in-house labs where they actually operate as a separate entity. And that could also include some additional regulatory mechanisms if the ADA clamps down on some of this stuff. So I'll put the information out there for those of you that are doing 3D printing, because this could become something you'll have to pay a little bit of attention to. The other thing the FDA is really diving into right now is implant failures. And so I'll post some information. There's some more comment. It's kind of operating like VAERS. So, you know, VAERS is the adverse event registry that you can self-report, doctors, nurses, et cetera, can report on. Implant failures, which Paul Goodman hates it when we use the word failure for implants, but implants that don't integrate properly or stop integrating at some point, they're starting to catalog that. And I think starting to try to collect some statistical data related to implant therapy. So anyway, I think that's important as a profession to know that there's a scope of what we're doing that now has piqued the FDA's interest to understand the long-term implications of what we're doing.
You know what else fails sometimes?
Everything. What?
Teeth.
Yes. No, I know.
They fail sometimes too.
And most of the time, again, we're not putting implants on patients because we take a perfectly good set of teeth and get rid of them to put implants in. Yes.
I'm trying to remember who it was that I heard say this. And this is like one of my favorite sayings. And I know it was up when I was visiting Paul Goodman, and he was having his meeting up in Philadelphia. And it was he had a lot of really great speakers up there. And it was, you know, they had this whole thing, team implant versus team tooth. And I love this saying. It's like an implant is not a replacement for a tooth. An implant is a replacement for not a tooth.
Correct.
You know, it's
Correct.
like, yeah.
Correct.
It's not like just, you know, like they used to say, just take them out and give me a denture. Now it's just take them out and give me some implants.
That's right.
Maybe not.
Yeah. So I'll post those informations. I think it's important that you understand what comment periods. So just a very quick education opportunity. For instance, when OSHA put in their emergency standard, they didn't have their traditional comment period. So when new regulation is supposed to go into effect, there's supposed to be this long opportunity for comment, which means all major players in that area get an opportunity to go before OSHA and legislatures to express concerns about potential unintended consequences, because maybe they don't see it from the perspective of a dentist, an optometrist, a veterinarian, like, you know, et cetera. So it's an opportunity for open comment, and open comment can go for years while they craft and fine tune their final ruling. And so, the ETS was different because we didn't go through the open comment period. These are the things that are normally supposed to happen with the FDA, with OSHA and other groups that are creating regulatory banter for us to have to operate within. So it's imperative as individuals or participants in organized dentistry that we participate in that open comment period to make sure that the voice of dentistry is heard, and that hopefully what comes out of it on the other end isn't so cumbersome and difficult to adapt to in our practice that it makes it financially unattainable, et cetera. So that's why these open comment periods exist. And now more than ever, we can appreciate the value, because we've seen what happens when no open comment is present and we go straight to regulation and all the unintended consequences that start coming from that when nobody had an opportunity. So
what I love about what we do now, and seriously, is how often did we go to, the joint council meetings or the House of Delegates, and all this important stuff was going on. And there was this group of us who were super involved, and we'd come back and we'd try to explain it kind of at a grassroots level and say, you got to get involved. You got to get involved. And I love that we have this platform now to kind of make people aware of what's going on so that they can be more involved and get involved in these open discussions.
That's right.
They're really necessary to the process.
That's right.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So my last news of the story, and then I'll introduce our guest for tonight.
Cool.
This one's really silly because now I feel very impassioned after farts in a jar, to come up with stories that will create a tagline or a trend. Maybe we pick up a trend for the following week. So this state highway patrolman in Missouri accidentally sent out a Batman. So they were testing their emergency system, and in testing it, he created this fake alert: Gotham City ammo purple/green 1978 Dodge 3700 GT. And he sent it out with like this alert or whatever, but accidentally he sent it to the entire state. Like, how you get an Amber Alert or something and it pops up on your phone and everybody gets it immediately? Well, he sent out his Gotham City alert and it went out to everybody in the state. Instead of it was supposed to just be a quick test. So anyway, immediately they had to send out a retraction of the alert that in fact Batman was not in Missouri, nor was Gotham City under duress at this time.
Hey, Chad.
Yo.
Do you think Jennifer purposely sits her chair up higher or angles her camera differently?
Oh, no, I'm standing.
Taller than both of us?
I'm standing.
Yeah, I think she's got one of those ergonomic exercise keto.
Okay.
Oh, no, I have
desk.
a desk that goes up and it goes down.
So I kind of feel like it's like, remember like Johnny Carson would be like, yeah, thanks for coming and visiting us. Come back again and see us sometime, would you?
Yeah, Jeff, I think we should stand too for the program tonight.
Now you see. Now you see.
Yeah, let's stand.
It's a power move, guys. That's all it is. All right.
We could tell. Introduce our guest.
Another person who will be sitting in a chair tonight. I've already seen him, so I know in fact that he is. Chris Griffin's coming on tonight. He is the chair of the Examination Council for the AGD. What does that mean? He is the guy who's overseeing the process of the fellowship exam for the Academy of General Dentistry. For those of you who are members of the Academy, you understand that that's an accolade that you can achieve based on the number of continuing education requirements that you fulfill and accomplishing passing this arduous exam. For those of you who are not members of the AGD, this is an attainable award that many of us members hope to get in our careers, to be an outward display of an educational accomplishment, diversity in education, and moving through our professional career. But I have the privilege of knowing Chris because much like what Jeff referenced, we serve together in Region 19 as part of the AGD delegation. And, he's been my champion. He's been a valiant fighter in many occasions to stand for what's right and what's good for the AGD and for our membership. I'm proud that we are in the same region together, and I'm super proud that he's here with us tonight. So without further ado, Chris.
All right.
Hey, Chris.
Howdy. I'd like to thank Jeff and Chad and Jim for having us on. This gives me a chance to speak about something I'm very passionate about, and would certainly like to wish Gary Myers a speedy recovery.
Yeah.
And also we have AGD President Dr. Jerry Botko on tonight.
We do.
And,
I actually think we may have a few more that are, I know Merlin was going to pop on, and Hans Guter is also on here tonight. So
awesome.
They're definitely participating for sure.
Well, the getting back to the exam and the fellowship status, of course, the fellowship status, it requires a couple of things. It requires at least 3 years continuous membership with the AGD as an active member. It also completion of 500 hours of PACE approved programs, successful completion of the fellowship exam, and attendance at a convocation ceremony at an annual meeting, which is a very elaborate ceremony. And there are a lot of smiles out there. I've seen it from the stage as well as experienced it from the audience also. And it is a great achievement. To tell you how big of achievement that is, it's only about 6% of general dentists have completed the requirements for fellowship. So the process of the fellowship exam is pretty extensive. I participated with the various committees and council since about 2006. And it's amazing how quickly the years click on by. And the people that I've been able to work with are just geniuses. And I feel like I'm maybe average at best amongst these people, and tried to dumb this thing down a little bit because these guys are really sharp. The examination council governs a couple of committees. We have the examination development committee, which reviews all comments, questions from the most recent paper and pencil exam, generates a new exam, and scores the most recent paper and pencil exam. The examination assessment committee is physically and verbally takes the exam generated by the development committee, and they review questions for the requirements, and they review lectures for the materials being presented by Region 17 at the review course. There's another examination committee called the Examination Materials Committee, which reviews all new questions and generates a new study guide yearly. There's one more group in there, and it's the self-study committee. The self-study committee the requirement for it is not a fellowship status. And we really have a lot of our academics in that maybe who have not quite challenged the requirements for the fellowship exam. But man, there are some really sharp folks out there. Mm-hmm. Each exam committee consists of about 6 people. In addition, the exam assessments and material committees, they must have experience to be on those committees. So you have to serve on the development committee to be able to serve on the assessment and the materials committee, because you need to have a good basis for the question development and statistical evaluations that are presented with these committees. All committee members with the examination, they complete a test writing course before their first meeting. So it's pretty extensive to get on the committees, and there's a lot of work involved in that. There are 17 disciplines, and each member is assigned at least one discipline to keep the banks current and keep the questions current. Each member is assigned a generation of new questions. It could be as few as 15, or it might even be as high as 45. It really just depends. Since we've got our question banks back up to speed over the last 10 years or so, it's been a lot easier than trying to get 40 questions in there to get it back healthy again. We also do some maintenance of the questions. So we probably have about 3,000 questions. I mean, it's a lot of questions that we have in our banks right now that we can pull from. And those questions always have to be updated, and they must have a reference of about 8 years in there. So they require textbooks, which are in a library, and you can get a list of those textbooks if you're trying to prepare and study for this. An audit of the whole fellowship exam process was just completed, And the protocols that we use for the development assessment, the question banks, the security, and the proctor protocols were all classified as exceptional. And our liaison, Chris Griffin, I can't say enough about her. She is phenomenal. And she has taught me a lot about the test process. The old exam used to be 400 questions. It was a K-type, multiple choice, true, false. It was 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. And it was a marathon. I took it. I'm not sure anybody else on the field of view here. Jeff, did you take that 400 question, or was it a little?
I did in Nashville. I think it was one of the first meetings they had in Nashville what's the name of that big hotel there? The Gaylord Opryland. Yeah,
it was truly an amazing experience because I was dead tired driving back from.
Oh gosh, yeah. It was like taking boards again.
When I got there, we had about 5 or 6 people that were from my class in dental school that were taking the exam, and they called my room and said, "Which room are you in? We're going to come up and have a few beers with you before this exam." I said, "Oh no."
Yeah.
I said, "I'm going to take the test. I'll stay tomorrow, and we can do whatever you want after that. But I'm not having a few beers tonight. I come to study and do the exam."
No, that was definitely a no-go at that point. But hey, Chris, let me ask you something though, because I think this is so important to the process. Like the fact that you're so involved now on the back end of this, like, you think someone who took a 400 question test and went through all this work, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm done. I'm so glad that's behind me. I don't want to be any part of that right now." But yet you're back right in the middle of it. So obviously the process meant something really big for you and maybe even for your practice. So I know it has for me. I mean, I think all of us, on here have gone through that. All of us here are very passionate about what the AGD does. But I think that because not all of the people watching us tonight are members of the AGD or have even thought about fellowship. So why don't you talk a little bit about how that process made you a better dentist or a better person, or how it impacted your practice, and certainly why you stayed involved with that process this far into your career.
Hey, Jeff, great question. And I'm going to pause right there and say, after Chris answers that, let's all go around and answer that, because I think that's impactful.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, my first foray into organized dentistry was the fellowship, and or actually SCAGD, and it was shortly before I really got involved in it that I had taken the test and had received my fellowship. And we know for certain that members who complete their fellowship exam, get all the requirements done, they participate and they are involved. And any organization it's only as good as the people involved, and you can't have 20% doing 80% of the load. You've got to have everybody involved. Everybody has to know what's going on with it. And so I'm not a hugely political guy, even though I have done just about every presidency you could get hold of in South Carolina for certain. And but I see the value in it, and I've sat through a lot of House of Delegates meetings, and like you were talking about earlier, there's so much that the average dentist does not know that's happening behind the scenes, and it would scare most people to know what kind of stuff's happening there that you don't have a voice in unless you get involved.
For sure. But even take that one step further. Take it, what did becoming a fellow do for you? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this, because I know that you really, you want to talk about what all is going on with the fellowship exam committee. But for all those people out there who are thinking about getting into the AGD or going down this path of fellowship, talk about the impact that it had, like on how you practice and the treatment your patients get, and how you view dentistry and as a whole. Yeah.
Well, education has always been a part what I've always done. And I remember one of my mentors was Dr. Mike Davenport, and I can't say enough about him.
Did you do the residency up
I
in
did.
Columbia?
I did, and he was the one that said, "Here, you're going to be the information chair for the South Carolina Academy of General Dentistry," and this is
that's how all you guys got in,
yeah,
was through that residency.
And so
now I got it.
You know, the more you know, there are more doors that opened up, and your knowledge base. You think you have a pretty good grasp of it, but as soon as you take another course, there's about so many more questions that are asked of yourself. You know, what about this? Well, what about that? What about this? And the next class you go to, and you think that, well, I've got a pretty good grasp on it. I can remember going down to Pankey and finishing all the Pankey, and I thought, well, you know, I think I got this occlusion thing under control, and went to the master's forum, and in about 2 hours, Mark Piper just shot that, you know, completely out of the water. And it opened so many, his idea of occlusion started asking more questions and more questions and more questions. And, you know, it moved from that to implants. And of course you get a core group that you move with, and establishing that core group to go out and do these classes over and over and over again. And pretty soon you got some years behind you, and you look back at all the good times and the information that you've been through, and how you've applied it to your patients, and how you can expand your scope of services, and how each time that you add another, you know, tool into your toolbox, how that generates even more to the whole system. I presented to the students at the hooding ceremony at MUSC, and one of my themes was, in 22 years will have passed, because it was 22 years since I had graduated and sat there. And one of my themes was, look, you got to get out there, because pretty soon you're going to be one of the mentors, and you're going to be one of the people they're going to ask questions to, and you've got to have an answer to it. And so I just, education and knowledge is king. And that's what the AGD is about, is education and knowledge.
Yeah.
I love that part of it. I mean, that's why we're in it. I think, one, it's to commiserate with one another, and to spend that time together, sharing challenges and victories. You know, we learn as much on a House of Delegates floor taking the fellowship exam as we do at the bar after all those things are done. And we're just, you know, sharing is caring in that particular scenario. So that's why the AGD has continued to be a big instrumental part of my life. When I took the fellowship exam, Chris, you're just going to cringe. This is going to make you want to pull your hair out. I had only taken the practice exams, and I had studied. I found actually a fantastic review course on Texas AGD, and I think somehow I may have
imagine that.
I may have crossed joining the Texas AGD for a year so I could take the review course. I'm not 100% sure. But I paid to take the review course. I sat through all the lectures. I took the practice test, which are only 100 questions. I was 8 months pregnant with my third child, which many of the people who are watching will just laugh, because it seems like every AGD event that I went to, I was pregnant with someone else. You know, like I was pregnant in Detroit. I was pregnant in Nashville. I was pregnant everywhere. All the AGD meetings, I'm always carrying an extra
yes, you were.
Piece of baggage. But I went to take my fellowship exam. I thought it was only going to be 100 questions. I had made lunch plans. I didn't really prepare for the fact that I had to eat every hour and pee every 30 minutes. So I go in and I sit down. I'm like, oh gosh, this is like 250 to 300 questions. I'm going to be here for 4 hours. So every 45 minutes, I had to get up, do the checkout process, go to the restroom, come back, take more questions. Anyway, I was not overly prepared for the process. So I think that's why it's important to have folks like you on here tonight to prepare people for what the marathon, it's not 8 hours anymore, but the marathon of getting ready to sit down and take that examination. I also think it's really valuable to tell people to take it right out of dental school when that knowledge is extremely fresh and they're in that exam mode. It gets more and more difficult the further we distance ourselves from standardized testing and from a lot of the educational modalities. So I've always been a big proponent of considering the examination process early in your fellowship. Maybe you feel differently, but early in your fellowship track, and then build the continuing education credits to kind of come along with that. Because by the time I was pregnant with a third, it was really difficult to sit down and carve out that time to focus and study. So anyway, that was my fellowship exam story. It wasn't great. I did pass. And I'm really close to my mastership. I'm really, really close. So
You said Texas AGD, and you know what that always makes me think?
what?
T-Bob.
T-Bob.
T-Bob. You can't say
So
Texas
talented.
AGD without saying T-Bob.
So talented. Chris, did that make you cringe?
No, it did not. Everybody's a little different. I think that probably about 3 years out is a really good time to consider it. You're still fresh.
Great.
You're still fresh. A lot of people maybe have accomplished residencies. There's a lot you learn in that first 1 or 2 years.
Yep.
And a lot that you solidify, and a lot of stuff that you begin to start to feel where your boundaries are, and you start to experience failure maybe for the first time because you've got a little time. It hadn't been just 2 years, but I do think preparation is a pretty amazing thing. We do obviously we do at the end of the test, we do surveys, and we figured out that the average study time for somebody who successfully completes it is about 40 hours.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different ways of preparing for it. Everybody's a little different. Yours is different than my story, which is probably different than Chad and Jeff's story. And so there are some study guides out there. We produce those yearly, but there's also a supplement that kind of contains a gracious plenty of them. The supplement is from 2008 to 2015. And, if you hadn't taken tests lately, it's good to see a bunch of questions, and you get into that rhythm of taking a test again. So yes, it's good to take it right out of school, but the AGD fellowship exam is not a National Boards Part 2.
Yeah,
it's
agree.
designed to teach a higher knowledge, to see what you've learned in those years. And so it is a more difficult test, but it's attainable, and it's a fair test. And it's not a pass. It is a pass fail, but it's not 70 questions out of 100 or 70%. It goes up and down because you'll have some groups that score higher on it. And so it's a norm reference exam, and the way it's scored. So, everybody's prepares a little different. I see some people I had to go and do. We also review our review course yearly. Some member out of the one of the committees or one of the council members from the examination council will go and sit down and do the 20-hour course, which is the review course. And our Region 17 puts on a phenomenal review course. And I wish we would even quit calling it the exam review course, because it is a dental review course. And it really should be classified as that. And I wish we could bottle that and send it all over the United States. Those guys do a phenomenal job with that. And they do not have any access to the exam. So if they suggest a question, it's not on the exam. There are no live questions out there on that anybody knows about that has seen it, unless you're the development or the assessment committee. That's it. No
what's really interesting, Chris, is, and I've thought of this often, especially as you go through that review process, taking national boards does not make you in any way a great clinician. It just means you've satisfied the requirements that have been put on the dental schools as to the minimum amount of knowledge that every dentist should have that gets a license. What's so different about studying for this exam is you automatically become a better clinician based on what you know from studying for the fellowship exam.
Absolutely.
I think that's such a key point. I mean, the current trends in pulp exposures, periodontics, just how to handle stuff clinically. And it makes you think through the process of learning for the exam in a way that you're like, okay, even if you fail this exam, you've pulled 20, 30 pearls that will make you a better clinician. And so what? You take it again, you pass it. I mean, you become a better clinician through the process. There's no way not to.
But
So
behind me, I used to do the my discipline was the oral surgery, and behind me in my bookcase over here, it must be 20 oral surgery textbooks, and I've read each of those cover to cover to find 15 questions that made a difference. It didn't sound, it was applicable to something clinical. And that's the one thing that I feel like over the years since 2006, the one position that I have enjoyed so much has made me read that, has made me study it to the point where if you can make a question over something and you can develop 3 detractors and a right answer, and it makes somebody think, not just stumps them. It makes them that they either look at it and know it or they don't know it. That's a good thing. And I really have enjoyed these committees and encourage people that if they have not joined the AGD to consider it, because you will find like-minded people who are after every little grain of knowledge they can get their hands on.
Yeah, I'm going to share my story because it's a little bit different than everybody else's, but I did a residency at Baylor. I refuse to call it by its current name, Partha, and you know why. But I did a residency at Baylor under Chuck Wakefield, who's taught in South Carolina for a number of years. He's got his master's, and he negotiated with Baylor that we could take all the CE that Baylor offered throughout that year. So I left my residency with 220 hours of CE within 1 year, which was fantastic. So, we were able to get a lot of CE. We were able to take the exam throughout our residency. And I was honestly above that. I was like, I don't need to take the exam now. I don't have any interest in that. I'm good. And, when I left, I was like, why the hell didn't I take the exam? And so fast forward, I'm practicing for 15 years and I loved what I did. I always loved dentistry, but I was bored. I mean, I was really bored. And I was like, why? I just kept asking myself, I've got all the hours. Why didn't I take this exam? So I decided to take it, and hands down, I will say beyond anything that I've done in my career, it was the best decision that I've made. And I'm going to say to take it later in my career because it completely reinvigorated my career.
That's awesome.
I had to look at facets that, I work on kids. I'm not a pediatric dentist. I didn't do any sleep. All of that stuff was in there, and it really made me think. And it actually made me focus on the portions of dentistry that I truly love. And so I would say that there's no wrong phase in your career. It's just maybe a little bit different for everybody as to when it is. But out of all my accomplishments, I know, maybe somebody will say, oh, it's just an FAGD. No, it's not. It was a damn hard thing to get. Yeah. And it wasn't the hours, because anybody can go sit through it. You can go sleep through that many hours of CE. But when you start studying for that exam, it really makes you think. And I have thought differently. And I just noticed tonight, Tarek and I took it the same year. We were in the same graduating class. And I can tell you, Tarek, my son was the one that screamed, "I love you, Daddy," when I got up there, which was really embarrassing, but everybody seemed to laugh. But and he was of much higher age that he should not have done that, but it was kind of funny at the time. But anyways, it was a great experience, a great accomplishment. And I encourage every single dentist to go out and tackle it, because I'm not as involved as these other people with the AGD. I love the AGD. I believe in the AGD. Maybe that's my charge, to become more involved. But I promise you, they're doing a lot for our profession. It's a damn good organization to be involved in, and they believe in education. So if you're looking for a way to reinvigorate your career, you've got the hours. Take the exam. Do it. It'll be one of the best things you've done.
The ceremony that they have for the fellows and the masters and the LLCs, that is an incredible experience. And I've never seen somebody frown coming across that stage.
And I was in Vegas. What could go wrong there?
The biggest downside is you become a better clinician. I mean, there is nothing about the process that doesn't somehow benefit you. And, you know, everyone out there has always heard me say, and, you know, maybe I've been the guy that has spent entirely too much money on education, but I don't believe that that's possible because, like Chris said, if you take one thing from one course and bring it back and use it properly, and it helps the care that your patients get and word gets around about that, education is not an expense. Education is always an investment. And education in this format, particularly, is just going to make you a more well-rounded general dentist. So it's one of those things that I did it very early in my career, like you, Jennifer. I joined AGD in my residency or just after my residency, and I took the fellowship exam as soon as I could, just because I've always been so attracted. I was just a vacuum. Like I just knew how much I didn't know when I got out of school. And I love my training in dental school. I really think I got a good dental education, but I was just a vacuum. I just wanted more and more. And the more good education you get, as Chris said, the more great questions you ask. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's no end to education. It's what Chris said. You know, he went to Pankey and then he was like, then I heard Piper.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to move on. And same for me. I mean, I went through ortho, then pedo, then I went out to Coys. Then I was like, no, I need more on the joint. And I went to Piper. And then I came back. You know, there's always a new question that needs to be answered. And that's the beauty of our career.
You needed more on the joint, Jeff?
Mm. They don't encourage that.
It's frowned upon.
Yeah.
I also think that once you start to get into these educational things, you kind of find yourself challenging other things. I remember taking the Academy of Implant Dentistry exam back in 2011 or 2011, and it was a tough test.
Yeah. No question, but every question makes you ask another question.
Yeah.
It made me get those books back out.
Yeah.
Hard.
And we're all nerds at heart, right? Like,
oh yes,
we may be fun, but we're all nerds at heart, and we all want the best for our patients. And so having an organization like the AGD, it's always been the one that's been near and dear to my heart. Chris, I thank you because, like I said, your class kind of came back from residency and just totally reinvigorated what we were doing in South Carolina. I don't know that I would have gotten as excited about organized dentistry had it not been for you guys coming back in and me seeing all of you so excited about it. And that got me back in the mix. And I just encourage all of you out there to take a look into it. At the very least, you'll become a better dentist. The upside is you're going to make some lifelong friends and just really make some connections that will take you a long way in this career. Would you agree, Chris?
My heart is with the AGD. I've served at both levels with the ADA and the AGD. And I'm going to tell you, for the general dentist, AGD is there.
I'm going to go a little further and say not just for the general dentist, because I believe that you all believe in strong relationships with specialists as well. I think the AGD has a much farther reach. That's my opinion.
Should we just leave it at that? It was such a good opinion.
No, it's interesting that you say that. One of the most involved people at the AGD at the national level, unfortunately, we just lost him, was a pediatric dentist from Aiken, South Carolina, at Rocky Napier. And he absolutely adored the organization, because instead of a general dentist who has knowledge being a threat, a dentist with knowledge became a better referral source for him. And he
100%.
got that.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of the specialists who embrace that and say, you know, an educated general dentist will be a much better source of referrals than the person who's just like, no, I can do this. I can do this. I'll just send them what I can't do or what I think I can't do. Because there's a lot of expectations that can't be met under those circumstances, where a really educated general dentist knows what they should or should not be doing and what to refer.
I think when I took the Implant Maxi course, which was 300 hours of education, incredible. The people that I met, we stay in contact daily on a website or email, essentially. But the more you know, the more you want better for your patients. And I know my specialist thought, well, he's taking those implant courses and he's going to do all the implants. I've probably sent out 15 implants this week alone, and it's only Wednesday. So I think that the greater knowledge you have, the more you want better for your patients, and you know that there's a higher dentistry out there. It's not just drill and fill.
All right, Chris, we have you here, and I think it's imperative that we take advantage for our future fellows out there to say top 3 pearls to study to get ready for the exam, 1 hidden jewel that you can share, you know, as someone who is in the behind the curtain, if you will, of preparation for the fellowship.
Well, I know what killed me.
Well, I'll tell you tonight, I had 3 pages of notes here. So if anybody wants those notes, they are relevant to the examination process. Awesome. and little hints. But there are preparations that you can do for it. I would advise, number 1, do not go take the exam immediately after the review course, because I personally think that I think you can do better, because that's like drinking from a fire hose. That is 4 years of dentistry condensed down to 20 hours. And as a reviewer going in there, I'm very tired when I get through with that. Now, I think people should use the review course as a measure of where they stand in which disciplines, and then they can go back and review a lot of that stuff that's there. Another thing is there's plenty of links on the AGD website that can tell you how to go about something, preparing for the course, and maybe direct you to some people that's going to help you out. Or maybe there's even a webinar on there that talks about the review course that really explains it, that Chris Canchola did several years ago. And I couldn't get the link to work correctly today, and she's working on that for me to make sure that goes. And I'll see if I can't forward that to Jen or Chad or Jeff and try to get that there. But I do think that if you can approach this from a study standpoint of really preparing it in a scientific way, studying it many hours, and then looking at all that information, hitting the review course, see where you're weak at, and then scheduling that exam at one of the local testing facilities at your own time where you can walk in fresh. Because I think if you start cramming things at the last minute, it just drops things out of boxes, and it's no longer organized at that point in time. You know, get a good sleep. If you go to the paper pencil courses, I mean, I did it myself, and have no regrets about it. But there's a lot of distractions at the annual meetings. There's a lot of friends, just like my buddy, coming up and saying, "Hey, we're going to have a beer with you." No, you're not. And I've seen people out till 12, 1 o'clock, and I go proctor the test the next day. And I thought, that's not good after sitting through 20 hours of all that information. So those are good. If there's any questions about that, I mean, call me. You know, my name, my number, it's out there. I'm all over the website. Also, give me a call. I will text back and forth, email you, pick the phone up, whatever it takes to get it done. We want fellowships because we know that that means more participation, and we know that that means better dentists out there. That's the pearl right there. I've got a lot of other stuff in here, but you know, that's
a great takeaway.
The biggest, you know, takeaway from this whole thing.
I think the bigger takeaway is something you said at the very beginning, and I'll add a little bit to it. Anybody who pays dues to an organization can slap a sticker on their entrance. Only 6% of people can say that they're fellows, and the number's even smaller for masters. And so what percentage do you want to be in? The 94 that's not, or the 6% that has taken that step to better their career and do what's best for their patients? And that's the takeaway that I want to send out.
Great message, Chad. Go ahead and close us out on that note.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go ahead and close us out. Chris,
we're
thank you.
Professional. I mean, we really should. We're basically all the major news organizations rolled up into one tiny podcast.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. Man, you know, we've had a lot of guests. I love the effort that you put into your notes. We'd love to share those if you're willing to let us with our group. I'd like to thank all of our viewers. We've had current, past presidents, you know, Dr. Cassis, we had Dr. Botko. We actually had one of those people from Texas, Partha, on there. You know, we had some really great people, Dr. Omer, Dr. Guter. I just really appreciate everybody that took the time to be here tonight for an organization that they believe in. Thank all of you for being here. Next week, we have a very special guest, Dr. Tom Viola. We're going to be talking a little pharmacology. So would love to have you all back, because I asked him two of the hottest topics in dentistry right now, antibiotics, and we're going to talk maybe a little bit vaccine, but antibiotics, COVID, and then I also pressed a little bit for some vaccine stuff and pain management. So we'll have Dr. Viola here next week, and hope to see you all back next week. Until then, have a great week. And
wait, love and best wishes, Gary Myers.
Oh,
yeah, Gary, get better.
Love you, Gary.
We love you.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers,
Nice.
everybody.
Thanks, Chris. So
Have
much.
a great night. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.